So, welcome to the first episodes of Ranking of Video Game Movies. We're starting off with Final Fantasy Spirits Within. I'm here with Colton and Kudrow. And I think we're going to
Peace,
start
Quinn.
with. Oh, yeah, I'm Quinn. Sorry. I'm new to the hosting, but I'll get there. But yeah, our first movie was Final Fantasy Spirits Within. I believe
2001.
Okay, yep, 2001. I don't know why 19. I was thinking 19.
July.
I think I was seeing stuff
2001.
about 1999, I think, somewhere. So that was in my brain. But yeah, released July 11th, 2001, which is obviously a part of the Final Fantasy franchise of games from, was it Square Enix, correct?
Yeah, well, so it was Square for a while. At that time, it was not Square Enix when this movie came out. Partially, you could say that the failure of this movie is partially the reason they became Square Enix because this movie bombed so hard. But yeah,
Right. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, it says right here it had a budget of $137 million and only managed to gain $85 million worldwide.
oh, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was, I guess. But
Still a loss of 50 mil.
Yeah,
sure.
it says it delayed the merge between Square Co. and Enix. So
Oh, it
there you
delayed
go.
it, so they're already
Yeah.
going to merge anyways. Gotcha.
Yeah.
According to what I'm looking at, yeah. It did receive 5 nominations for different awards.
Oh, like visual effects stuff.
I'm not sure on specifics.
I gotcha. I would
I'm
have
kinda
to
looking at
bet
the
it's
wiki,
like
so
visual effects stuff that it would be awarded for. I can't
probably.
imagine it was for any of the movie aspects.
We'll get into that later. But yeah, I guess I'll get it started with kind of a synopsis of the movie, and then we can go into kind of our thoughts and feelings about the movie. So it takes place on Earth in the year 2065. So like actually not too far away from where we are now, I'd say, but it starts off with in a world where there's phantoms that have taken over the world, or what we believed to have taken over the world. And it has caused humanity to kind of take cover in these barrier cities. So they're able to use this I don't even know what it was called.
Yeah, right.
Or other energy shield or something
A
like that.
magical shield.
Mhm.
Right. That protects them from phantoms coming in. And the phantoms are, I guess, what you'd think of as a phantom. They're kind of like these spirity energy beings that kill people. So they'll attack you if you're not protected, essentially. So that's kind of like the setting. It's essentially a post-apocalyptic Earth, and we're taking in Aki. Dr. Aki is in old New York City looking for the sixth spirit, as we come to find out, which she's looking for by herself without any protection. And then the Deep Eyes squad comes in and is like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, you're not supposed to be here. But she's very stubborn, and she goes and finds this sixth spirit, which turns out to be a little itty bitty plant of some sort. They keep calling it a weed, or I don't know. The squad's not
They don't care.
To see they're not excited to see what it is. They're not blown away. Let's say they don't have much information, to be fair. But so anyway, they kind of are able to get her and the sixth spirit out with a little bit of trouble because they spent too much time kind of looking for it. So then they make it back, and turns out the captain of this Deep Eyes squad is an old acquaintance of Aki's. His name's Gray. Gray Edwards, I believe. And so they're kind of have this weird, I think it's like a love interest kind of relationship, at least as initially as it's put out there in the movie. And they come back, and turns out Gray has been infected by a phantom. So he's like quarantined, and then turns out Aki saves him using some laser equipment, which I guess is kind of a little bit of a foreshadowing in the movie. And I guess the main like problem is for humanity, how are they going to get rid of these phantoms? So we come to this council meeting where Aki and her superior, Dr. Sid, are talking about, what their options are. And essentially there's two options. There's a big laser in space that they can shoot at this crater, which we come to find out, the Zeus cannon, which is where we come to find that the phantoms are originating from. So essentially the phantoms came from outer space on a meteor that crashed into Earth, and then they just spread throughout the Earth, causing, wreaking havoc, killing everybody until they obviously were able to create these barrier cities. And Aki has these visions, which seems to be how this alien race was destroyed back on their home planet. So you see all the destruction, and then a meteor kind of breaks off of the island, the planet they come from, and goes towards the Earth. So back to humanity's issues, they want to get rid of the phantoms, obviously. So there you can either shoot them with this big laser, which should hopefully destroy the source, or Dr. Sid has an idea of essentially using waves to disrupt the phantoms. I really didn't get what the idea of it was behind it. I don't know if you guys did, but it wasn't really that overwhelming to me in terms of convincing me.
Right. A lot of things are just kind of left unexplained, and like you just agreed.
It's definitely not as fleshed out as it could have been, but it seems the general plan was they're trying to find 8 spirits, and what they're looking for specifically is 8 spirits with certain wavelengths that they can they'll combine and create this certain energy wave that almost would act like that effectively would like run opposite to the energy wavelength that the phantoms give off, which effectively would,
like a neutralization.
Like neutralizing them.
Right.
Which I think actually does have a basis in particle physics, but can't say too much about it other than that.
I mean, nothing about this movie feels like it has a basis.
We'll get to that. But anyway, so now we get to meet General, I forget his name.
The evil guy.
General.
The guy they're obviously setting up to be the pure evil villain.
He's got a leather black like duster and black gloves. Like he's the evil guy. You just know as soon as you see him, and he's convinced that they need to use the laser cannon, because he's the big evil guy, I guess. I don't know. Mm-hmm. He's all about power. He's kind of wants to get back at the phantoms because they killed his wife and his child. So he's all about destroying them with brute force. Dr. Sid's like, hold up. If you use the laser, you'll damage the Earth spirit, Gaia. So you kind of get to see how the spirit world kind of connects to the physical world, which I think is a big portion of this movie, is, the spirits versus the physical world. So they're kind of going back and forth, and then everybody's like, well, we want proof that this Gaia, is real or exists. And they don't really have any proof, but then Aki exposes herself and says, I have a phantom living within me. Like, we have it contained, essentially. I'm not really sure, like how convincing that, like, bridges the gap there, but I guess it works.
It kind of does the opposite effect, right? Because you kind of end up because Aki is infected with the phantom particles that, obviously they're contained, but because she has them, that actually convinces Hein that, hey, we gotta keep an eye on her because, she might, be a turncoat.
Right. Yeah. So now the general is like scrutinizing them a little more, but they're able to kind of continue on their mission of finding these 8 spirits. So on their next mission, they go out to Tucson, I believe, the Badlands area and out in Arizona to try and find this seventh spirit, which they end up finding. But it turns out that the phantoms are attracted to the phantom within Aki, which causes, I think, one guard to lose or one soldier to lose their life. And then the general had sent a couple soldiers to keep an eye on, the captain and Aki, and they weren't having it. So they kind of revolted against those two guys, and then they got back, and things didn't go over very well. They were essentially arrested while coming to find out Aki is dying from, the phantom within her. So the general arrests them, and then he's just looking for a reason to, or not a reason, he's looking to the council to allow him to use the laser. So he has the bright idea to take down the shields in one sector of the barrier city to let some phantoms in, and then just to neutralize them, I guess, but as kind of a way to convince the council that they need to use the laser, which I can kind of understand. But if you were going to neutralize them anyway, like if that was your plan, obviously they were going to kill some people, because from the way they put it out in the movie, like they just let it open and they're like, okay, now go into that sector and go get rid of the phantoms. They're like,
Right.
they didn't prepare at all for it. They just opened it and then they sent people. So he was obviously willing to sacrifice a certain amount of human life for the cause to convince the council. And it kind of backfires because the phantoms are able to move through the plasma infrastructure. So they escape the sector that they opened, and they start wreaking havoc. And so everybody's evacuating, including the general, who somehow makes it out alive after everybody else in the room dies. And then the rest of the team and the doctors make it out as well from their prison. And I think a big point that I don't know if I want to say point, but kind of a turning point within the plot line is they have this realization that the aliens aren't necessarily invading, or the phantoms aren't invading. It's more of they just, kind of ended up here. Like they didn't choose to come here. They died on their home planet and then they became ghosts and got launched into space, and they just so happened to land on Earth.
They called them confused. They called the phantoms confused.
Right. So I kind of understand that, but it's still like, well, they're still gonna kill you, right? Like they're obviously aggressive and bad things.
They call them confused, but then it's like the rest of it would imply that they have been like maliciously going after people. So I'm not sure how that evens out, but
right. It didn't seem like. I mean, we obviously don't know who was the aggressor first, but it doesn't seem like the human. I mean, maybe the humans attacked first. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Right.
The humans are still going to try and get rid of them. I guess it doesn't really matter. So everybody escapes. The general is like out in space, and he's like, I think he's contemplating suicide because he's like, he just messed up.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. I'm about to say he's got the gun to his head. He's getting ready to pull the trigger, and then he hears that he gets that communication over the comm.
Right. That he can use the Zeus cannon to do what he wanted. And so he's like, oh yeah, hell yeah. Let's go. Where in parallel, Aki and Dr. Ross come up with this plan to do the opposite, use the wave.
Right. We need the eighth one. We need to go to the source to use the eighth one. They're like, we can do it at the site.
Right. So from her dream, right, she's told by one of the phantoms or one of the aliens that the eighth one is within the crater. So then they use one of those vehicles to go into the crater, find the eighth one, and use the wave disbursement plan.
Mhm.
This is all happening while the Zeus cannon's firing. I think it fires once, and destroys the ship, or no,
Uh,
it fires once, and then it like doesn't do much, and then he fires it again, and it breaks the ship, and
right.
it blows itself up. So the general dies, and then Gray like was trying to use the battery from the ship, but then the ship blew up to like disperse the waves. So then he
Mhm.
uses his own body to disperse the waves from Aki, and essentially sacrifices himself to neutralize the phantoms, which ultimately works. So yeah, and then the Earth is phantom free.
Yeah. Um, as I was saying, nothing in this movie has like a good like basis. I feel like it just from the beginning, I could not like. Oh my gosh, nothing is nothing. At no point in this movie was I like, oh yeah, that makes sense. None. It's just like this. It's just like a cascading, just garbage fire. Did you
Right.
get what? What did you guys think?
Um, Not the best first impression. I definitely think it's an interesting concept. I think it is a little played out. Like it's well,
Yeah.
I guess I can't say it's played out because it was made in 2001. So, but yeah,
I mean,
humans
e-
and taking over the world and getting rid of the apocalypse type of thing. So,
right. And some of the concepts are fine, I guess, but just the spirits and like I just feel like they're going after the sixth spirit. And I feel like you just kind of get dropped in. We're going after the sixth spirit, and they never really explain what the hell the deal is with the eight spirits. I, did they?
Well, I mean, like it's kind of like alluded to, like not very well, admittedly, but so the whole thing. I mean, the whole thing is just kind of like what I said a little bit earlier. It's like you're looking for eight spirits because okay, so everything on the planet has a spirit, and there it seems as though the spirits come from Gaia. Like honestly, like it almost seems like they ripped like the concept of the life stream right from Final Fantasy VII.
Right. I was thinking that
Yeah,
too.
like everything, like everything is comes from Gaia. Everything returns to Gaia.
Right.
So, but the whole thing is like every single creature has a spirit, and it seems as though like what they're looking for specifically are eight specific spirits that have these like specific wavelengths that they're then going to like kind of put together to create this certain wavelength that will effectively basically will run like the opposite form of wavelength to the phantoms, and then that'll kind of like I guess eliminate them is kind of
Right.
neutralize them.
It's just
yeah,
like a
neutralize them.
everything about the Phantoms is weird, and I don't understand why they did all that. Like, did the did showing like actual monsters with like some whatever the skin texture they could create did it not look good? So they're like, okay, we got to make them all like glowy red outlines. I I just don't. I have to imagine that's why. Because why make them all just glowy red outlines? That's not any fun.
Well, I feel like it's kind of I think it's actually part of like an indicator that they come from that these are spirits that come from a different planet.
Mhm.
So like if when you look at when when phantoms were pulling out the souls
Oh, the humans, yeah,
of the
yeah,
human beings, like
yeah.
you see the color of their soul very clearly. It's blue, which is the exact same color as the Gaia spirit that you encounter in the mountain.
Oh, the Gaia
So
spirit. Oh my god.
yeah, so it's all you see that very clearly, but then it seems like and then the converse, like the aliens are like glowing like this orange color, which is the same color of like the alien, as like the aliens planet spirit
Yeah.
that starts popping out of the ground once the Zeus cannon starts getting fired at it. So I think it's just kind of like one of those early indicators that like this is, and it's almost like a little bit of foreshadowing. It's like, hey, these are just like spirits that they're from a different place.
I gotcha. The Gaia, like that blue pool, how does that look so like the Mako pools with PS1 graphics look better than what that Gaia pool looked like. I don't the most anti-climactic like pool of life source I've ever seen.
That's $137 million pool right there.
I guess so. I like some of the character movements and character models don't really hold up, which I guess makes sense considering, it was probably one of the earlier things to do this kind of thing. Um, but that doesn't make it okay watching it now. Um, so I I don't I also the voice acting is just atrocious. I felt like the voice acting of nearly every character was awful. It's like just so flat and like oh, it was so unengaging. I felt like the whole time I'm watching the movie, I don't care about what any of the characters are doing. I don't even know what the hell they're doing half the time. I have to really like
Right.
it doesn't do a good job of
Yeah.
leading you along into the story. I feel like the biggest thing is it at no point drags me into the story, or I feel like it doesn't do a good enough job of setting up its own world, and I just bounce right off of it because I I have no fun watching this movie.
Yeah. I definitely was struggling to make a connection with any of the characters. I think the most interesting like character relationship was just Aki and Gray. Like, yeah, that was, there's some like emotion there, but other than that, like really not much. Like they tried to make the general kind of more human with his wife and child being killed, but it just seemed like it was thrown in there for no reason. Like that's his motive, but I didn't really feel like drawn to him as a character for that reason. I don't know. I didn't feel bad for Aki. I didn't really feel bad for humanity, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you put it well. It's just it didn't draw me in. It didn't do that for me. So
And the bigger sad thing for me is I think a lot of the Final Fantasies have really cool worlds, and then you come at this and it's just one of the worst. I have zero interest in whatever world they built. I was the same way. I didn't care what happened. I'm like, yeah, blow up the planet. I don't care. Like it's are the rest of the people on the planet like this? Man. Do you guys have any redeeming things to say about this movie? Because I think I have almost none. Even the music, like think about all the great Final Fantasy music, and then I didn't. I mean, the music in this it's probably better than the other aspects of it. And
I wish there was a little more color. It felt very bland. Like
yeah,
there's plenty of animations, back. I don't want to say back then, but in the 2000s that weren't like as bland as this.
yeah,
I get you're trying to paint the picture of like apocalyptic, but I feel
yeah.
like they could have added a little more color. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe they're trying to show kind of the differences between like the spirits, like when she had the plant, like the plant was a lot more colorful, like it was a very like bright green, so I guess that might have been their artistic choice. But
Mhm.
I think in terms of like world building, it would have been cool to see what's inside the barrier city, like what does the city look like.
Right. I don't know what the
What
world was. I
Right.
guess.
It was just a bunch of hallways and equipment and
Mhm.
like bland gray
And I almost,
hallways.
did they like specifically like, okay, we need to go to a bigger audience. We can't have like the anime Final Fantasy type stuff in here. Like, I wonder if they intentionally went away from the over the top stuff you might see in a JRPG game, which I think really hurts it because that would have been way more fun.
Well, I feel like the problem there is like, and this is probably part of the reason why the movie didn't really do that well,
Mhm.
is because like I feel like it tried in some ways to appeal to a mainstream audience, which
Mhm.
didn't work because it still had Final Fantasy attached to it. And but then it also didn't really do much to draw in your Final Fantasy fans because it was completely disconnected from the rest of the franchise. And just as kind of what we're pointing out here is the world was very underdeveloped,
Mhm.
and it's not really enough to draw people in. So it's like you're not appealing to the casual fans, you're not appealing to the Final Fantasy fans. So I mean, you're not really finding a fan base.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys have to say, but I found nothing redeeming about this movie, and it's one of the worst movies I've seen in a while.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, if we're gonna, okay, yeah, I'm gonna be the devil's
All
advocate.
right, let's take your stand here.
All right, look. As far as the animation goes, I really don't feel like this, like the animation and such would be that out of place with like an eighth gen video game. Like like
Sure.
a lot of it just felt like watching one long like cutscene on the
Yeah.
PlayStation 4.
Fair.
But I mean, fine. That's perfectly fine. I mean, I didn't really think the voice acting was that bad,
Really? Okay.
which is kind of surprising because like I mean, actually, there's a lot of big names
Right, I
attached.
did see that. I
Uh,
it's the delivery just felt so flat throughout all the movie, and all the characters seemed kind of disinterested to me. Maybe I'm trying to think who might have been like the Doctor Sid guy. Maybe he was okay. There's a Final Fantasy call out, Sid.
yeah, that's literally like yeah, like that was one of the big things like I was trying to do as I was watching this movie. It's like what tells me this is a Final Fantasy movie?
Yeah,
Like
Sid.
what
I
tells me
think
this Final Fantasy like Sid and the live stream
the live stream.
parallel. Yeah, it's like
Right.
that right there. Other than that though, it's like it's Final Fantasy in name only, which
Right.
I honestly I almost wonder if the movie would have did better if they just called it The Spirits Within and just let it stand on its own as a sci-fi movie.
Yeah. They. I mean, yeah.
They
You
had
know, and
Alec
it.
Baldwin and Steve Buscemi.
Oh, I remember Steve Buscemi. Was Alec Baldwin Gray? Who's out?
Yeah, he was gray.
Yep,
Yeah.
Captain Gray, Steve Bush. Let's see here. Ving Rhames, James Woods was General Hine.
Yeah, and you know, some of that could just be literally the dialogue and the script they're given to work with. I don't feel like any of it was particularly good.
I, I mean, yeah, I can see where you're. I said, like, I'm not saying like this. The world is not the most engaging. It's not the most well developed. I think the movie probably could have used another 30 minutes of runtime to really explore more of the setting and explain and maybe even better explain its premise. There are certain subtleties though in the writing that I think I came to appreciate, particularly at the end.
Yeah.
So I mean, like one of the things that I think we kind of glazed over when we were doing the plot synopsis
Hmm?
was like because like after the city was destroyed and the captain lost the three men to the Phantoms as they were leaving, like you see Gray and Aki sleep together. And so I think, and
Oh,
based on like
right.
the dialogue, because there's a lot of lines where they're talking about how, like the reason they're looking for the eighth spirit, and the eighth spirit is supposed to be converting from like it converts. It basically, so the eighth spirit is a phantom that converts into a more into a Gaia spirit when it's exposed to a new life, when it's exposed to a new Gaia spirit.
Mhm.
So like and I think that's kind of like the implication of like why so that the phantom that was inside of Aki gets turned into a Gaia type spirit because it
Mhm.
was exposed to a new life from Gaia, aka her and Gray's now unborn child.
Uh, and some of that stuff, I feel like for me, like that stuff gets ruined by the fact that the world building didn't draw me in, so I'm not interested in the intricacies of the world, I guess. Like at that point in the movie, I was kind of everything they did, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, you're dumb.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I mean, maybe I mean, maybe certain things like didn't bother me as much as they did you. I still,
Yeah, no, that's yeah,
yeah,
it's understandable. I'm sure there's people who don't think this movie's terrible, but I think it is an atrocity. So I'll start off. I would give I give this movie an F. I can't. This movie was so bad. There's nothing redeeming either. I, nothing. F.
Dang. It's pretty harsh.
I respect your opinion. I feel that it's wrong, but I respect it.
So where are you guys at on this one?
Quinn, what about
Yeah, I don't like it either. I won't go as low as an F. I'm gonna go with a D. Because
D.
it didn't really
Wow.
draw me in, and like Colton said,
Wow.
it didn't do it for me. I think maybe I didn't spend enough time trying to really like understand what
Don't
the
apologize for the
connections
movie.
were. I'm not trying to apologize, but it happens to me sometimes. Like I don't.
You're
Like,
making
I don't,
up
like,
excuses for this awful movie.
I'm not.
You're like, it was trying to be better.
I think your perspective can change as you talk about it. No,
Yeah, no, that's
I
true.
think it's fair.
I think the more I talk about
Yeah.
it, the more I dislike it.
You just get angry. You're just Final Fantasy. You just remember how you played the game, and you're like,
Yeah.
"What? Why is
What the hell is this?"
Final Fantasy? What is this garbage?" Yeah. So I'll stick with a D, but it's free on YouTube. So if you really want to go watch it, you can go watch it on YouTube.
Don't watch this movie.
See, I don't know. I feel like this movie was definitely worth a watch. I feel like I should have rewatched it. Honestly, I think I'll probably do that a little bit later in the month.
Wait,
Just
when
to
was the
maybe-
last time you watched it?
All right,
I mean, just like yesterday.
he's committed to watching it again this month. You have to sit through that again this month.
I will sit through it again this month. Yeah, because I'm wondering if it'll get better on a second watch through.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if this is a movie that needs it.
let me know if it does.
I mean, hey, I'll be happy to update the ranking if and when I do. Right now, I'm gonna put it at a C.
Oh my gosh.
I
A
feel
C.
I think the animation, which I enjoyed. I mean, some of the characters in the world building falls a little flatter than I would like. I think there are enough interesting concepts presented in the movie and the animation itself, which is really nice to look at. At least for me, it was.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with a C.
All right.
If it changes, my maybe this rating will change.
All right. Well, let's talk about overall where we would put this. This is our first one of the ranking of video games. So this will be our first placement in the tier. So obviously, I think it should be at F, but Kudra has some strong opinions here about it being higher than that. I mean, what do you think, Kudra? Like an E, or do we put it in the E tier?
I mean, I feel like an E tier is insulting. If we're gonna put it anywhere, if we're gonna balance these three rankings, we can put it in D tier.
All right, you think it deserves to be in D? All right,
I think D tier is fair.
We'll put
Can you
it in
accept
D.
that, Colton?
Yeah, we'll put it in D for now, and then once we get some more movies in here, we can take a look back and be like, "Wow, that movie really was not good," and then we'll be like, it's probably actually an F.
Look, we're talking about video game movie adaptations.
That's
There's
what I
going to be
was
a
gonna
lot
say.
worse than this. I'm willing to bet money there's going to be a lot worse than this.
I can't wait till we watch Super Mario
I think, if
Brothers.
anything, this movie is only going to go up because we're going to be like, no, in comparison to
Up
this,
from a
Final
D.
Fantasy Spirits Within was
Oh
really
my
not
gosh.
that bad.
Well, I was gonna say real quick, we already did watch a a video game movie as a part of the podcast. We
What'd we
watched Sonic
watch?
2.
Oh, we did watch Sonic 2. All right,
So do you want to add that right now?
Yeah, let's tier up Sonic 2. Where does Sonic 2 fit in the overall tier? So if we're talking video game movies,
What did we all watch that? What did we all rank that? I got to look back at our.
Kudra, look up the ranking for us. So I'm thinking tier wise in video game movies, Sonic, it was like a good movie to watch, but I just felt like it wasn't like a great movie. It was just kind of a watchable movie, and it wasn't bad. To me, Sonic, it's probably like a C tier, but I'm guessing you guys think it's better than that.
Oh,
Wow. It looks like we don't have a Sonic 2 in our
yeah, I'm about to say it's
archives.
like,
Because we did watch it and talk about it before.
I think it was all like in the the usually like in the beginning of the episode where we were doing like
Yeah.
the informal stuff.
What-
I figured we were gonna make that its
So-
own episode a little bit later.
All right, then we'll come back to Sonic 2
Yeah, we can
later
do
and
that.
rewatch it and do a full discussion. But yeah, Quinn, you want to call it the final?
Yeah, so final ranking, what for Final Fantasy Spirits Within on ranking of video game movies, we're going with the D tier. We'll continue to watch more video game movies, and I think this week we'll be watching the new Uncharted, or the relatively new Uncharted movie with what's his name?
Mark Wahlberg.
Tom
Is it-
Holland,
Tom Holland.
aka Spider-Man.
Yep, the most recent Spider-Man. So feel free to watch that this week, and yeah, we'll come and rank that next Thursday at 9 p.m.
It's right on Netflix, by the way. So the Netflix